All right. Hi guys, it's Mrs. Kushner, and today we are going to take a look at part 1 of figurative language. So make sure you have your notes ready to go, and let's get started. In this video, you're going to learn 7 common types of figurative language. So today we're going to take a look at similes, metaphors, personification, idioms, hyperbole, alliteration, and onomatopoeia. These are not the only types of figurative language, but these are 7 very common types. So that's where we're gonna kick things off. All right, so first off, what is figurative language? Figurative language, simply put, is phrasing or wording that goes beyond the literal meaning of the words. So the author has a second meaning, not just that literal meaning of the words. And I get it. Why would an author use that? Why not just say what you mean? Well, really, they're not trying to make their writing more complicated with figurative language. They're actually trying to make it less complicated. You see, authors use figurative language to help their readers understand something. Sometimes they're using it because they want to help their readers imagine or picture and visualize what they're talking about. Other times, figurative language helps take a really thorny, complicated topic and make it relatable and make it easy to understand. So, before I tell you what each of those 7 mean, I want you to pause and challenge your memory. Actually, when I'm done speaking, pause the video and go ahead and challenge yourself. Write down, maybe on a post-it note or a scrap of paper, what you think each of the 7 types of figurative language means. Now, if you haven't been taught one, that's okay. Just recognize, I've never learned this one, and then you know where you need to especially focus once we get to explanations. For the others that you have seen before and you have talked about in school before, write down what you think they mean. And this is going to be fun for you to see just how much you actually remember. The ones you don't remember or the ones you get wrong, that's where you focus. The ones you got the definition right. Congrats. It's like a pat on the back. And then you know, perfect. That's just a review. I want to focus my attention on the other ones. All right, go ahead and pause the video now and write your answers. All right, you done? Let's get started and see how you did. All right, a simile. A simile is when the author compares 2 things that are not alike, but they use the words like or as to make that comparison. So for example, from The Outsiders, soda attracted girls like honey draws flies. Now, soda's a funny name, but it is a character's name. And this figurative language, well, it helps me picture what soda looks like. Suddenly, my picture of him changed in my mind. I need to make him really handsome, really like the cool kid. If he attracts a lot of girls, then he must look like a cool kid. Metaphor. Second one. This is a comparison of 2 unlike things. So you're right, that already sounds very similar to simile without using like or as. And here I pulled from Wonder. August is the sun. Me and mom and dad are planets orbiting the sun. In this case, I don't think that the sister and mom and dad are literally running in circles around August. Instead, it's explaining complex family dynamics in an easy to understand way. The family's dynamics center around August and his needs, and everyone else, they relate and exist in relation to August. Now, it can be really confusing to keep similes and metaphors straight in our minds, and I think this helps us see why. The confusion is that they actually do the same job. Both similes and metaphors are comparing 2 things that are dissimilar. They do the same job. The difference is how they accomplish it. Similes use like or as, whereas metaphors use forms of the verb to be. So you're going to see I am, you are, he is, she is, or it is. So for example, she is a pretty picture versus the simile form, she is as pretty as a picture. Two different ways to accomplish a very similar end. Next up, personification. All right, personification, look at the first word, or the first section of the word personification, and you'll see the word person is buried in there. That is your hint. That's your mental reminder of what personification is. This is when authors give human qualities to something that is not a human, to an animal or an inanimate object. So when we say the teapot sang as the water boiled, the teapot did not become a musician, but the teapot whistled. And I now imagine hearing that teapot as the water boils. Next up is idiom. Idioms, you might not know this definition, but I promise you, you speak with idioms whether you realize it or not. An idiom is a common phrase that means something different than what it literally says. So from Wonder, again, his mom wasn't the only person who didn't RSVP at all. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So the idiom, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, means a kid is oftentimes similar to their parents. Another common idiom I grew up with was, woo, it is raining cats and dogs. I promise you, no cats and dogs have fallen from the sky yet. I keep looking. Instead, it actually just means it rained really, really hard. All right, hyperbole. I think we're on simile, metaphor, idiom, personification, hyperbole. We're on number 5 out of 7. We're making great time. All right, so a hyperbole, here's your memory clue on this one. Look at the first part of hyperbole and you see hyper. Now think about other words you know that begin with hyper. I'm instantly thinking of hyperactive and hyper-aware and hyper-focused. Now let's break down those. So hyperactive is someone who is overly active. Hyper-aware is someone who is super, super aware of stuff. And hyper-focused is someone who is overly focused, maybe so focused that they're missing other things going on in their environment. So hyper means overly or even too much. And in this case, that's a perfect reminder because hyperbole is a statement that is exaggerated, that is made too big. So our hyperbole here from Wonder again, Dad was in such a hurry to follow her that he dropped the video camera, which broke into 1,000,000 pieces. That camera probably did not break into 1,000,000 pieces, and no one took the time to count the actual number of pieces. But it does help us imagine that it broke into many, many pieces on the floor. It's just an exaggerated version of that statement. Next up is alliteration. All right, number 6, alliteration. Alliteration is when the same sound occurs at the start of multiple words in a phrase or in a sentence. So Dr. Seuss is perfect for alliteration. This is a really extreme example. David Donald Do dreamed a dozen donuts and a duck dog too. So he used that D sound at the start of word after word after word after word after word in the sentence. A lot of times alliteration in our literature, in kind of middle school and high school literature, is a lot more subtle. It might only be 2 or 3 words next to each other that start with the same sound, but those 2 or 3 words are enough to help the words flow really beautifully and smoothly, to create a sound that's pleasant, honestly, to our ears, that makes us want to keep listening. All right, and next and finally, onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is words that sound like the thing they describe. So think really funny looking word for words that sound really funny. These are your words like zip, zap, zop. All those crazy sounding words. And here we have an example. Miss Rhodes says crackling, keening, bursting, pounding, the wind screeching. All those ing words she chose, those are all onomatopoeia words. And she chose them intentionally to help us in our minds imagine the sound of the wind as it storms about. All right, how did you do? Be honest, how did you do? Check that Post-it note and give yourself kudos for every single piece that you remembered. All right, great work. In this lesson, you've learned why authors use figurative language and how to recognize 7 common types of figurative language. Last up, take action now. Write a question about today's lesson on your notes. So I want you to look over your notes, look at all 7, and see the type of figurative language that you're still stuck on. That's the one that you probably need to write your question about so that we can make sure we touch on it tomorrow in class. Now, don't have any questions? Maybe you quizzed yourself and you got all 7 right? Congrats, you can still do the same thing. Look at your list of 7. Think about which one you found most complicated or confusing, and that's where you want to target your question. Just instead, you're writing a question that you think your classmate probably has. You're evaluating what is most confusing or complicated, where is someone else most likely to need help. All right, great work today, and I will see you next time.